Today on the Servant Leadership Podcast, Bob Dahl shares with us how servant leadership plays out in the world of finance. Bob is the Chief Executive Officer and Chief Investment Officer of Crossmark Global Investments. For decades, Bob has held prominent positions in some of the world's leading financial institutions. Before joining Crossmark Global, he was the Senior Portfolio Manager and Chief Equity Strategist at Nuveen Asset Management. Bob is widely recognized for his market insights, making regular appearances on major financial news networks and contributing to various financial publications. Bob is a frequent speaker on the integration of faith and work, and his approach to leadership is grounded in his strong faith and commitment to ethical investing. Today, Bob will share his valuable insights on how servant leadership and ethical investing can transform the world of finance.
Bob, thank you so much for joining us.
A privilege, Chris. I'm looking forward to our time together.
I am so excited. I think when I think of you, I think of something a little bit strange. You're involved in something that people think about a lot. You're involved in money. And people think about their money a lot.
Yes, they do.
Talk to us about your journey. How did you get into what you're doing today? And explain a little bit about what you do.
Yes. So how did I get involved? My family didn't have a lot of money, so we weren't in the stock market. I went to school, decided I was going to get an MBA. The wisdom was working between the two, so you get a little experience. I dated a girl whose father was an investor, and I just fell in love with what he did. And I said, this is the calling on my life. You can read your score in the newspaper every day. It's a combination of art and science. It's politics, it's economics, it's finance, it's math, it's psychology, and it changes every day. The day you think you figured it out, the market's going to turn around and smack you in the face. That's happened more than once in my career. I think, well, I got this figured out, and the market says not so fast. So it's been a fun journey. As actually earlier today spoke with someone else in the business, and we admitted to each other, it beats working for a living.
When you think about it, I'm sure people ask you all the time, when's the right time to start investing? How do you even get into investing? As we're talking, a lot of people are going to be listening, and they're all over the spectrum, leaders and people who are just jumping into investing. What advice do you give beginners?
Get started. It's like so many things. If you wait till you know everything about it, you'll never get there, because I don't know everything about it, and I've been doing this for over 40 years, and I'm still discovering new things. So my view is get started, do a little more if you can, and be smart about it. You put those three things together, you got a shot at having a good nest egg when you need it.
When you're looking at all the craziness that happens in the market, any time of year, month after month, year over year, how should people feel about it? Just being the general public, non-savvy investor.
Yeah, so you brought up feel about it, which equals psychology. The longer I'm in this business, Chris, the more I realize it's fear and greed. When everybody is bullish, you should be a little cautious. And when everybody's running for the hills, that's the opportunity to step in. It's not a perfect guide, but you can track. They actually have, as you can imagine, sophisticated scientific measures of sentiment. And sure as we're talking to each other, when the sentiment moves to the high end, markets usually take a little rest and come down a bit, and vice versa. So feelings are important, but understanding your feelings so you can push them to the side when it comes to the objective nature of investing, that's very important. I try to do that. I always get there. When I make a mistake and something goes down on me and I realize I'm losing clients' money, it's hard not to have feelings and get emotional about it, but you got to take that out if you're going to be successful.
One of the things, just knowing you and reading about you and seeing you in the news, one of the things that you talk about is faith, ethics, and how those are related to investments and how they should be. Explain some of your perspective on how you view investments.
Yeah, so I'd start with a very big picture thought to that good question. Capitalism, which is what markets are part of, only works if there is a belief in doing the right thing and not doing the wrong thing. It takes that kind of warp and woof of a society for capitalism to work. And then you build on that by realizing that almost any profession, having integrity is going to get you further than not having integrity. Lots of things that a lot of people do involve trust, confidence. And so if I'm going to have trust and confidence in you and you in me, integrity is a big piece of what it is that we do. So, and you know the saying, to build up a reputation takes a long, long time, but you can destroy it with one stupid move. And that's the case for investors and, frankly, almost for everybody.
Wow. When you're thinking about this, how do you make decisions and what to even look at? And how would you think people should even look at the market?
Yeah, so it's like so many things. If you're investing full-time at the endeavor, you got a shot. If it's part-time, it's a lot harder. It's sort of like, okay, if I go to the doctor and he tells me, Bob, got bad news. You have a brain tumor. And then I get out a manual that says how to fix a brain tumor, as if I'm going to fix this thing myself. No, I want to know the best brain surgeon you can advise me to go see. It's the same thing here. Doesn't mean you can't make an investment on your own, but those of us that do it full time, we struggle. And I know a lot of people do it part time, and you can't get your arms around everything. So that's the first principle to think about. Secondly, you asked how do I go about doing it? I start with a quantitative model. It has 55 variables in it. Sentiment variables, as we talked about a minute ago, valuation, earnings, the balance sheet, returns on all kinds of things. How does the company use its cash? What's the return on incremental cash? All of these variables have some predictive power. And if you can put them together in a sensible way, you've got a good model to help direct where you should spend your time. No model has the answer, in my opinion, but boy, it's a good guide. And I say it's my crutch to get me across the street. It's the starting point.
On this podcast, we talk a lot about leadership and servant leadership specifically. You've been a part of some amazing organizations. You've been a part of Merrill, BlackRock, Nuveen, now Crossmark. How are you seeing leadership play out in the finance world? How do you see servant leadership play out, if at all?
It's a very interesting mix. As long as I've been in the business, I've observed a lot of leaders. And there are a lot of leaders, I would say, those three characteristics, please, let me try to apply them to my leadership. And there are others where I say, I'm not going to go there. Probably not a good way to lead. And you use the phrase servant leadership. It works. Servant leadership often means you demonstrate by doing. I manage portfolio managers as the chief investment officer and the CEO of the firm. But I'm also a portfolio manager myself. So I know when I'm in the trenches, sometimes I get it right, sometimes I get it wrong. So that can be instructive, and it can increase your credibility with your staff because you're serving them, because you're working in the trenches with them. So that's one way to express servant leadership, but there are lots of ways, and I underscore and believe it's a great way to go because, the Bible, the most sold and most read book in the world, has a lot to say about servant leadership, and that's one of my models.
As you look through and think through building great teams, and you've built many great teams, and I know you have a lot of followers, people who listen to you and have tried to model their whole careers after what you've done. How do you best build into people, and what do you look for and encourage them to do to build into other people?
A mix of things. The first thing that comes to mind, and I anytime I'm interviewing somebody, I'm looking for curiosity. Somebody who's interested. Why? How? I've had people I've interviewed, when I'm done in asking them, hopefully good and tough questions, they turn around and I say, do you have any questions for me? No, I don't have any questions. That's it. It's over. It's just not going to happen. There's got to be a natural curiosity to want to know, to want to figure out, to want to engage. That's pretty important. Work ethic. It can't be somebody that says, well, you're in the office 3 days, you're working home Mondays and Fridays. Monday and Friday, I twiddle my thumbs, or I walk my dog, or I watch a movie. Not particularly interested in that either. So curiosity, work ethic, and I come back to something you already talked about, integrity. I got to believe this person is honest, is true, is going to admit when things aren't going well, not going to hide the mistakes. They're all key aspects, not just to work, but to life.
Well, I think a lot of people are hoping for their next big break or the next big opportunity. You've had an interesting career where you've had a lot of highs, a lot of lows, but people also look to you and respect you and ask you to join programs like CNBC, Bloomberg, Fox, CNN, whatever it is, to talk about finance. Those seem like really big opportunities. How did those even come about? And how do you think through like what the next big opportunity is in your own life?
Wow. So when you've been doing something for 40 years, you definitely get a bunch of opportunities, and you got to figure out which ones to take. Therefore, you have to say yes sometime and no other times. I know back to discovering the investment management business, I'm a portfolio manager. That's my trade. That's my ticket of admission, if you will. The management and leadership roles are on top of that. I'll not forget when I became CEO of the investment management business at Merrill Lynch Investment Managers. We were the 7th largest investment management firm in the world at that time, people all over the world. And my boss, who said I was the next CEO, said, so who's going to manage the money that you manage? I said, oh, yeah. If it's a choice between being CEO and being money manager, I'm a money manager, and I'm going to lead by example. Well, he didn't quite understand that, but he let it go, and that's what we did. So my point is, you got to figure out how you're wired, what your North Star is from a career standpoint, and go for it. So I've always had that as the center, and then the other opportunities to lead, to manage, to be on television, et cetera. They've been ancillary in some sense to the core, and you got to get the core right if these other things are going to work out, Chris.
As you think through some of your growth over the years, you obviously look to so many people for input as well, and I think that that's something that we see constantly is being surrounded by good people. How do you figure out who to surround yourself with?
Wow. Great question. And, I've been at it for a lot of years, and I still struggle with that question. It's more, let me take the good things from this guy and avoid the bad things. And rather than this is the guy I'm going to follow. And I've tried to do that over the years. And, some people are really good at some things and not so good at others. Same with me, I'm sure. So it's a matter of characteristics. And can I imitate that? Can I copy that? Can I advance that after taking it in to fit your personality and your particular role at a point in time? I know the easier side is to say, I'm not going to be like that. And we've all had a bunch of those. And part of it's personality driven, how God's wired us. But part of it, I think, also is how does it fit with what I'm trying to accomplish? I know as someone who's had leadership and management responsibilities, you have to be a good delegator. And I know from people who've worked for me, they'll observe, Bob, if you have trust and confidence in somebody that they're going to get the job done, get it done well, be honest with you, you give them all kinds of rope. Conversely, if it's somebody you're not so sure of or you're not have as much confidence in, you're there on their backs all the time. And I may have that schizophrenic nature in me because of the subject person I'm seeing in front of me.
I love it. When talking to people about their money is, I don't know if it's weird for you, but I feel like it's a weird conversation that a lot of people have, just always wondering if they have enough, if they don't have enough, if they're going to have enough, what they have compared to other people. All these questions just run through people's mind. How do you help people even think about money from the basics?
The first thing that's popping into my head, I have seen very wealthy people be incredibly generous. I've seen very wealthy people be incredibly stingy. I've seen very poor people be incredibly generous and very poor people being very stingy. So there's a matrix there, and you got to figure out, where does this person fit in when you're trying to talk to them about it. Look, money is a medium of exchange. It's a means to an end. Too many people think it's the end. You know, dealing with these wealthy people, sometimes they will, they'll ask, how much you think is enough? And I know the answer is always the same. A little more. If I have $1 zillion, I need another $500 million. If I have $10 zillion, I need at least 2 more zillion. You know how it goes. So yes, it's a touchy subject. And, most of the time I'm dealing with a portion of their money, and they're assigning to me or to our firm at Crossmark a piece of it. Let's say it's the equity portion for large cap US, and they've got the other pieces doled out. So you interact with them on a segment rather than the whole thing.
So have you found it hard to, or do you ever try to convince people of different ways to view money? Or are you not necessarily trying to convince them of different things? You're more just trying to understand where they're at?
It depends on the setting and what the opportunity is and what the obligation is. When I'm in front of organizations that are faith-based, which I often am, because I am a man of faith, my first principle is to educate people that the money they have is not theirs. It's God's. And he's entrusted us as stewards with that money for a point in time. And it's not just our money. It's time, it's relationships, it's our mind, it's our body. These are on loan to us. So that doesn't work with the audience, as you can imagine, Chris, but it does stimulate thinking.
Yeah, I love it. How do people respond when you start talking through some of that?
Yeah, it depends. Some people, I hadn't thought of it that way. Other people say, yeah, I'm right with you. Tell me more. And other people say, no, I worked hard for that money. It's mine. So you get all kinds of reactions, as you can imagine.
So explain to the audience a little bit more about Crossmark specifically, what all you're doing, how they would even find Crossmark, or where they can read about Crossmark, things like that.
So Crossmark is a faith-based money management firm that manages money in a values-oriented way. We try to help individuals, financial advisors, and institutions to line up their investments with their values. And that comes lots of different forms and shapes. And sitting down with somebody at the front end and saying, so what are your values? I never thought about that. But often that's the beginning of an interesting journey where people say, no, I would never want to invest in that, or I'd never want to invest in the other. And it's not just what are we against and going to exclude from the portfolio, but it's also who's doing good. What are the companies that are making a difference in society, educating, feeding the poor, all kinds of good things to look at. Not just do they have a good balance sheet, a good income statement, and strategic plan. They need all those things, don't get me wrong. But when you layer these other things on top of it, all of a sudden there's a deeper purpose. So that's what Crossmark does. We manage mutual funds and separate accounts, primarily in stocks and bonds.
So I think a lot of people, when they listen, will hear companies like Merrill, hear companies like BlackRock, hear companies like Nuveen, even like wherever. And there's all these great people, and they're just, and I mean this in a good way, they're money hungry. They're trying to get the most, they're trying to get the most for people out of their money. And then maybe is there a perception, and is it a real perception, not a real perception, that trying to choose good, ethical, just moving in the direction that Crossmark has moved, is it as quality? And obviously you've proven over the years that it is. Explain that a little bit, how you even came to this conclusion.
So several different thoughts, Chris. First of all, the returns profile. 10 years ago, I haven't been in the values-based money management all my career, but I'm there now. And among the reasons I am there is there now a whole lot of empirical studies that show you don't give up anything. If you had asked me 15 years ago, if you go that route, you have to give up 0.5% a year, 2% a year, and we would have gone, we don't know. Now we have empirical studies that you don't give up anything. Returns are almost identical. Some years a little better, some years a little worse. So that's taken the sting out of a lot of people thinking about this potential space. I, in my career, have at the beginning of every year done 10 predictions about the economy and markets and politics and all those good things. And one this year, prediction number 8, is faith-based money management takes an increasing share of assets under management for the 8th year in a row. We recently got the first quarter data, and it shows a little uptick. It's a small piece of the money management world, but more and more individuals, more and more financial advisors, and more institutions saying, yeah, I line up all of my life with my values. Why not my investments? So that's part of the background for Crossmark and the other folks that we have in this little corner of the money management industry. To repeat, it's growing nicely.
That's super exciting. And it is crazy to think through that. It is just a crazy perception. I think that people think, hey, I can't do good and make more money. I know a lot of the best investments, I know you're not going to go out there and give straight up advice to people necessarily on this, but I know a lot of the investments are investing in companies that are going to last, and the companies that are going to last and do well are the companies who are doing better for people.
You're here. No question about it. And it's you bring up a point, or you remind me of a point. About a quarter of the money we manage, 25%, we manage for people who don't necessarily share our faith. And I get close and I say, well, why are you having us manage your money? And the response is, you have good products, you have good performance, you're good people, and I trust you. Will you manage my money? That warms our hearts.
I love that. So you talk a little bit about these predictions that you make every year. I know there's some of the most sought after predictions out there. People literally wait for these predictions every year. How do you even come up? I mean, obviously there's some logic behind them. They're not random. What's the process to come up with these?
Yeah, it's a rigorous, time-consuming process. I view it every year as like a master's thesis. I start about the beginning of the fourth quarter, recognizing, in 10 weeks, I've got to come up with these predictions. So I start making notes. I'll be in a conversation, or I'll listen to a podcast, or I'll hear somebody interviewed, or I'll read a piece of research. I'll take a note, or I'll rip it out if it's a piece of research, underline it, and I assemble a pile. Second week in December, my assistant knows no meetings, no travel, no phone calls. And I literally come in Monday morning of that week, and by then I have a pile. And I start, Chris, putting them in little piles. This is earnings, this is the economy, this is interest rates, this is politics, et cetera, et cetera. And I start making notes. I usually come up with, 20 or 25 of them. And I begin to say, well, this one's inconsistent with that one. Got to use one, not both of them. And you narrow it down to 10 that you hope you can live with. We don't change them all year long. So we get some right, we get some wrong. And we want to get them right. But the real purpose is to help people. So that's the process. And, we release them New Year's Eve as soon as the market closes every year.
How can people access them every New Year's Eve?
CrossmarkGlobal.com. Go on our website. And you can find them there. And thankfully, when January comes and we've released them, you'll find them all over the press.
Love it. When you think through those, how many differ year to year versus how many are the same with different numbers, I guess?
Yeah. The subjects generally are the same, but the predictions very different. There's always one about the economy. There's always one about the direction in interest rates. Earnings, we always have the 10th one's always a political prediction, et cetera. So asset classes. So the subjects are reasonably consistent through time, but the actual predictions are very different year by year.
Wow. When you're doing all this stuff, obviously you have your hands in so many different worlds. You're trying to understand so many industries. You bump into a lot of good leaders. You bump into a lot of bad leaders. And when you think through, how do you measure how successful you are as a leader personally? What are you looking at to figure out, are you doing well?
Yeah, great question. It's not just the bottom line and the results, but it's not just what we do, it's how we do what we do. I ask my direct reports on a regular basis, how am I doing? How am I doing with you? How can I do better? So that's among the ways we occasionally do a 360 review, and that's a sobering process when everybody gets a chance to tear you apart, as it were, or pat you on the back, and it's usually some combination of the two. So we're always learning, we're always growing, and we're always wanting to be better. So you're right. The first thing is you got to ask the question, and then you can figure out how you ask the question and who do you talk to when you ask those questions.
Okay, I've got 10 rapid fire questions that I want to ask you.
Okay.
And just say the first thing that comes to your mind for any of these. So, question 1, who's the first person you think of when I say servant leadership?
Jesus Christ.
All right, 5 words that most describe yourself.
Hard charging, never give up.
Love it. Favorite author or book?
The Bible.
Love it. Favorite movie?
Favorite movie. I just resaw The Sound of Music. I just love the setting, the story, and the music.
Favorite food?
Favorite food, anything Italian.
All right, favorite thing to do in your free time?
Sleep. I do that. I read a lot. I listen a lot. I love to play hearts with a few friends. Card game hearts.
Wow. I was going to say, and still answer the surprising fact about you, but that's a good fact. Any other surprising facts about you?
I direct the choir at my church, and I play the organ. And that's another great pastime. Totally different from what I do all week. When I'm busy playing a prelude and fugue on the organ, my mind has no time to think about the stock market.
Wow. Favorite place you've been?
Paris.
All right. Place you want to visit that you haven't been to?
You stumped me. I'd love to do a safari in Africa somewhere. I haven't done that.
All right. Last of the 10. What's the best advice you've ever gotten?
Other than buy low, sell high. I'm going to be a similar theme. Follow Jesus. That doesn't get me in too much trouble when I get that right. And when I don't, it gets me in trouble.
Wow. This is so good. Well, Bob, thank you so much. I'm so excited for people to be able to follow you, listen to you, hear from you on today's podcast. This has been an awesome treat.
Thanks for the opportunity, Chris.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Servant Leadership Podcast. If you enjoyed what you heard, please give it a thumbs up and leave a comment below. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell to never miss an update. Be sure to check out the servantleadershippodcast.org for more updates and additional bonus content.